Okay, joining me on the phone right now, Mr. Tyler Hensleigh. How you doing?
I'm doing well, thank you.
Go ahead and tell me what addiction that you had.
Well, my addiction specifically was alcohol when I was growing up. Ever since I started drinking when I was in high school, I pretty much had a problem with alcohol. I didn't drink up until the point I was about 16 or 17, about a junior in high school, and I just remember the moment that I started, it immediately kind of had me in its clutches. It was like, as soon as I had the feeling of being drunk or intoxicated, I remember just feeling like I was complete. And it was almost like this very toxic relationship that I had with alcohol that just got out of control relatively quick. And as far as I can remember, I thought I had control over it. And at first in high school, I was just kind of partying on the weekends. And then as the disease kind of progressed, I remember getting into a lot of trouble. Drinking became more important to me than some of my, things I enjoyed doing, like sports in high school, and I quit football teams and basketball teams. And then I was getting into trouble with the law. Got my first DUI when I was 17, and I remember I blew a .14, and I remember the officer did a sobriety test, and I passed about 3 out of the 4, which showed that my tolerance had already increased quite a bit if I was still able to function at a .14. And this was just at the age of 17. And I remember my parents trying to control my drinking, control me, and I just remember being out of control. And at some point I decided to join the Navy when I was right out of high school, because I kind of figured I needed some kind of discipline, and I needed some kind of, escape from Montana. And I still didn't really think that alcohol was the problem. I think I just needed to grow up a little bit. So I joined the Navy, and in the Navy I really found a lot of people that drank the same way that I did, and I kind of surrounded myself with those people, and so that my drinking behavior was normal compared to what everyone else was drinking. But then it just started to get out of hand. By the time I was 23, I was drinking in the morning in order to kind of cope with life, to be able to function. I felt like without alcohol, I wasn't able to get out of bed or to do anything, to have any kind of resemblance of fun. I remember my last year of drinking I knew it had gotten to be a huge problem, and that I started to see how much my life revolved around alcohol, and I wanted to quit. The last year of my drinking was not fun. It wasn't fun anymore, and I still couldn't stop. And that's when, the insanity of addiction really took place, is where I was isolating. Some of the heavy drinking friends that I had started to back away from me. I disconnected from my family. I wasn't speaking to them anymore. The girlfriend that I had left me, and then I ended up getting into some pretty serious trouble with the law. I was getting more DUIs, and I was in the Navy, and I remember I was almost done with the Navy and almost about to get out and get all the benefits from the Navy, like the GI Bill, which would pay for college, the VA loan, and all the benefits that you get from serving in the military. Just before I was about to get out, I got arrested for another DUI, and it was actually my 4th DUI, and it was a felony. And I remember my life just kind of fell apart in a very short time span, where I was about to get out of the Navy, I was about to go to college, I was going to get all the benefits, and then all of a sudden now I was getting discharged, other than honorable, losing all the benefits. I had wrecked a car while I was drinking that I had just bought, and all of a sudden these lawyer fees kind of accumulated. I had about $26,000 of debt due to my drinking, and I had lost all the benefits of the Navy, and it seemed at that point that my life was over with. Everything that I had worked for was gone, and that the last 4 years in the Navy was a waste, and that I could never come back from this kind of deficit. And I was incredibly fearful of what life was going to come my way, what was going to become of me. I couldn't quit drinking, and I just felt that I was going to be like a homeless person for the rest of my life, and I'd end up like that. And I was kind of starting to come to terms with that, just be accepting of that's going to be who I become, and I should just accept that. And due to the number of DUIs I had, Virginia was saying that the state of Virginia, the prosecuting attorney was looking at getting me into 3 to 5 years of prison, and that was really a very scary situation where I didn't know whether or not I was going to prison or not, but it looked like very much so like I was going to spend the next 5 years in prison.
So was that the final straw, I guess you could say? That opened your eyes?
It was part of it. What really happened was the month before I was supposed to go to my court date, I was still trying to get out of it. As an alcoholic, I was always trying to scheme on ways so that, when I messed up, I was trying to alleviate as much damage as possible. Like I was made excuses, and this kind of led to me trying to escape the country. I remember trying to make my way up to Canada, or thinking about it, and then never really following through with it. I was on Craigslist trying to find wives in Australia so I could get citizenship in there and just kind of leave USA forever. And this is all in the midst of very heavy drinking. It's kind of like a blur of trying to escape responsibility and accountability for my actions. And then, it just didn't seem like any of that stuff was actually really going to work. And I ended up showing up to my court date, and I was drunk for court. And I went to, I had 2 court dates, and I ended up going to jail. And my first couple of nights in jail, this is before knowing whether or not I was going to prison, they put me in jail. And I just remember my first cellmate. His name was Warren Dallas, and he was just this old guy. He was 65 years old. He didn't seem like he was a criminal. He seemed like an educated man. He was in there for just not paying back unemployment. And he was getting out in a couple of days. And I was looking at 3 to 5 years. And I started to, you start to make small talk with your cellmate in jail. And, he asked me what I was doing there. And this was after a day or two, and I went through the kind of withdrawals of alcohol, and things were starting to become clear. And I started to just tell him my story of how I lost everything. And I was like, I'm never going to be able to come back from this. And he, looked at me, and he was like, I'd switch places with you any day of the week. And I was incredibly confused as to what he meant by that, because he was getting out in a couple of days. I was looking at 5 years. And then he turned and told me that, he has lived his whole life in regret. And that although he might be in jail for just a couple of days this time, he's been in and out of jail his entire life. Whereas he might be in jail a month next month or next week or something like that. And he's missed opportunities, and he's missed important dates like his son's graduation and his anniversaries. He's been divorced, and he just was this man that was filled with so much regret, and that he didn't allude to it, but he kind of made it seem like he just made a lot of bad decisions that had led him down this path. And he looked at me and he's like, I wish I could be 23 again, because that's how old I was at the time, 23. And he's like, if I was 23 again, you have your whole life ahead of you, and you can just start making the right decisions now. And in 3 months, your life will be different. After you get out of jail or whatever, 3 months, your life will be different. And if you keep on making those right decisions, in 3 more months, it'll be even better. And then in 3 years, you'll have an entirely different life. And he said this to me, and it's not words of wisdom that I haven't heard before. People have been telling me this my whole life, was to make good decisions. But I felt at that moment, the point at where I was in my life, that I was at this point of so much pain and so much sorrow that I was actually able to hear it for the first time. And it was at that moment that everything kind of snapped into focus for me a little bit. I knew exactly what I had to do. He was this guy that didn't even tell me to quit drinking. He was just this guy that just told me that, hey, you got your whole life ahead of you. If you make better decisions, you'll have an entirely different life. And I really clung on to that. And it was, as soon as he said that to me, it was almost instantaneous. My life got better, even though I was still sitting in jail with him, still going through withdrawals, and still facing 3 to 5 years in prison. I came to terms with all that. And I also came to terms with the fact that if I do go to prison, at worst 5 years, that I could still rebuild my life and I could still get better. And then I ended up going to my next court date, and they dropped it to a misdemeanor. I had to spend about 6 months in jail, and then as soon as I got out, I just immediately went to, meetings with people that use alcohol the same way that I do. And I kind of learned how to live life sober that way. And then life, just like Warren Dallas told me, like as soon as I started making right decisions, my life got better. And everything that he told me has been true to this day, that I have lived a life that I never expected, even when from that moment that everything kind of clicked. I would have never imagined life being as good as it is today, and it just continues to get better and better. There's some days that are worse than others, but I'm able to handle those days better than when I was drinking. Things don't always go my way, but I do have the skills and the ability to lean on good friends when those times do get hard. And I started to when I got sober, I kind of fell into to school, and I was able to really accomplish things when I got sober. Like there was a lot of things I said I was going to do when I was drinking. I had a lot of ideas, a lot of plans, but I was never really able to follow through with those plans. All I could do was make more plans and more excuses as to why I didn't finish the last plan. But now in sobriety, I find myself, it's just easier to stick to my word and stick to what I'm going to do. And I'm really grateful that I'm an alcoholic. I'm actually really grateful that I had all the experiences that I have had, because without those experiences, I wouldn't be the person that I am today. And I'm grateful that I was able to kind of find it at a young age, and to kind of hear those words, because I did get into addictions counseling after, and I kind of dealt with people that had been drinking, their entire lives up until the point they were like 70 or 60, and they've just done, there's a lot of damage that they've done. And I'm grateful that today I don't have to live like that. Today I have a different way of living.
What is the total now as far as how long you've been sober?
I haven't had a drink since June 5th, 2009. That was the day I went into the court. So it's been just over 7 years.
Wow, that's amazing.
Yeah,
because it's not easy for a lot of people to go through that and stop. What prevents you and motivates you to not go back to that?
Well, I need to constantly remind myself of who I am and where I've come from. I think there are days that I definitely take my sobriety for granted. That I don't. I've after 7 years, you just get kind of used to it. It's become a way of life now. But if I don't remind myself of where I came from, then I'll forget. I mean, there's people that have been sober for a long time, and if you don't constantly kind of keep the maintenance of sobriety up, then you either don't work the principles of like the program of sobriety that I live by, or you just kind of go back into old patterns of behavior. Like you said, even though I don't drink and I haven't had a drink in a long time, that's not to say that I don't still have a lot of character defects that my alcoholism kind of caused. If I take away the alcohol from me, like I still have a lot of really bad behaviors like lying, omitting the truth. I'm still manipulative. Unless I start working with other people and I start working on myself, like self-improvement constantly, then all those behaviors start to kind of trickle back into my life. And even if I'm not drinking, I can still be selfish like I was as an alcoholic. I can still be, inconsiderate of others. I can still struggle with other issues in my life. And that's the term called like a dry drunk, where, they're not drinking, but the person isn't living like a very, very happy life. And so for me, it's important to kind of remind myself and kind of work the steps of sobriety that I've learned from the people that I first surrounded myself with when I quit, and to kind of keep good friends that have the similar experiences than I do, and still remain sober from that time. And that's important to kind of surround yourself with people, because like I said in my story, like I surrounded myself with people that drink like I did. because I surround myself with people that accept me for who I am. And when I was drinking, I needed people to accept my drinking behavior. I needed people to accept the way that I drink. And so I chose people that drank the same way I did for that acceptance. And that skewed my perception of what normal drinking was. Like my perception of normal drinking was drinking to blacking out. Now looking back, I can see that's the insanity of alcoholism or drug abuse, that you surround yourself with people that do the same things you do, so that anyone that doesn't do it is weird or abnormal. And now that I surround myself with people that, you know, have gone through those similar experiences, they can identify with the same kind of crazy behavior, the same kind of selfish intent, where alcoholics and addicts use people, they use to their advantage, you know, just to get either the drug or alcohol, or to satisfy their own needs. And we don't really think about others too often. And so surrounding myself with people that have lived that life and now live a different life is what kind of keeps me sober today.
The one thing that I really thought was very special about your story is you went for a little bit of a trip. You basically were riding for a purpose. And explain what you did.
To make a long story short, there was this news story about this person that was running across the country, and I was like, oh, if I ever get sober, I'll do that. And then I looked into it a little bit more, and I found out, like, the person that has done it, the one with the record, was this man named Charlie Engel, and he was actually a recovering alcoholic and drug addict. And this was back in 2009, and I kind of made this drunken promise to myself that if I ever got sober, I'd do something like that. And then I got sober, and then the dream, I had the dream in the beginning of completing it within my first year of sobriety, but I had a lot of damages that I had to kind of repair. Like, I had a lot of debt that I had to get myself out of, and I had a lot of consequences that I needed to be accountable for. So, I eventually started working. I started to go to school, and I kind of forgot. Life kind of caught up with me, and I kind of just didn't think about it as much anymore. And then, I was about to turn 30, and I was kind of reminded of that dream that I had, and I felt like if I don't do something, I just had this feeling like if I didn't do it soon, like really soon, I was eventually going to I wasn't going to be able to do it. And so back in 2014, I just made this commitment to myself and a friend of mine it was actually 2013. Now that I was going to save up, and I was going to leave Montana and bicycle across the country, and I wanted to kind of tell my story along the way. And so, I saved up. I worked like 4 different jobs for a year, and I really just cut back on all my expenses, and I left January. I moved I sold everything I had, and moved. Pretty much, I was homeless again by choice for 5 or 6 months, and I just lived off my bicycle. And I would bicycled from San Diego all the way to Charleston, South Carolina, about 2,000 or about 2,400 miles on bicycle from January to about March. And I went up the coast to New York, and then I went west again and ended up in Chicago. And so it was just this really incredible trip that I was able to kind of meet people and kind of share my experiences with people. And it was kind of like completing that dream that I had that I wanted to do, and that kind of goes also into something that I said earlier, that I always made plans, but I never really followed through with it. And this was a pretty big undertaking that I made plans for, and I followed through with it. And it was really, really something that I'm so grateful that I was able to do, that I was able to do it one day at a time. And I remember when I first started and I got done with my first day, And leaving San Diego, there's like a 4,000-foot climb you got to do. And I just remember looking at this map of like the country and my route, and I was like, this is impossible. How am I supposed to do this? But I just remember just like relaxing myself and just remembering just to take it one day at a time. And then slowly and surely I kind of started to make my way across the country, and I would cross, I remember crossing the state line from California into to Arizona and being like, all right, that's one state, and then doing it from Arizona to New Mexico, then New Mexico to Texas, and Texas to Louisiana, and just being able to see a lot of the country and meet so many different people from so many different walks of life, and just being able to talk to them. And yeah, it was, in short, it was definitely an incredible experience that I know not a lot of people have the opportunity to do, and I'm glad, I'm grateful that I was able to do it.
Now, last and finally, I know this is going a little bit long here, but I just want to ask you one thing. If obviously there's a lot of people who may be listening to this that have some sort of an addiction, whether it be with alcohol or with drugs, and as we both know, the drug problems that are out right now are just absolutely ridiculous. And
heroin, yeah.
Yeah, Montana has the meth problems. Out east here, it's a lot of heroin. Along with it, there's still a lot of alcohol problems as well. But for those that are listening, what can you tell the listeners that are going through addiction to kind of motivate them, to let them know what can they do to get started if they want to get past their addiction?
I think what I struggled with the most when I was really struggling and I was really isolating, I felt that there was no one else on the planet that could possibly relate to me. That all my problems were very unique to me. That no one would be able to relate to me. And although I know that's not the case anymore, I think it was just I was so afraid of telling people what I was actually up to, and the crazy thoughts that I would have, and the crazy things that I've done, and the moment that I did, the moment that I started to share who I was, it was almost like instant relief. It was this, like I said, acceptance to me is something that I think all humans, we crave. We crave acceptance. And I think for the longest time I was afraid that I would not be accepted for who I really was. And for those that are still struggling, that you're not, just to let them know that they're not alone. That no matter how crazy you may seem, or how crazy you may think you are, or how unique you think you are, that the moment that you decide to get help, that you make a decision that you're going to talk to someone, that was a huge step. That's I think one of the biggest steps, and it seems like it's something so small, but it's something so huge that you start talking about it. Like it gets out of your head. You talk to another human being about it, and you start to realize the connection that you have with that person that is or has suffered from addiction themselves. I think that moment when that happens is something that I was so afraid to do, and as soon as I did it, when I was ready to, made the difference. I felt like my body and my brain had so much, I had so much pressure on the inside because I was holding so much in, that as soon as I did that, it was like so much relief came from it. And I would encourage anyone who's listening that is struggling with it just to talk about it with someone who understands.
If you have any questions, I'm sure if you have any addiction questions, I'm sure Tyler would be happy to answer any of those.
Yeah, you can email me at, it's just my name, Tyler Hensleigh, 1@gmail.com, or you can find me on Facebook and message me on there, same thing, Tyler Hensleigh.
Well, Tyler, it's great to talk to you, and, we've talked about doing this interview for a couple months now, and, your story is truly, truly inspiring. But anyways, I'll let you get going here. I appreciate the time, and, best of luck, and, I wish you the continued success in all your endeavors.
Thank you very much, Tim. I'm happy you asked me to do the interview. I'm happy to make time for you.
All righty.